every time we meet here on Abatanye to talk about parenting, because here on Abatanye, we are all about how to be a better parent to our kids. And sometimes in all these things, it can get scary. And we have a lot of questions on our mind. Today on this episode, I'm going to talk to you about some of the most questions, the frequent questions that we mostly ask ourselves. And I'm going to give you some answers that hopefully can put those things out of your mind and put your mind at ease. My name is Anaya. I'm always your host for this program right here at City Star TV. And always, I said always keep reminding you, if you haven't subscribed, you are missing out. You should kindly please subscribe and then hit the notification bell, or you miss out on other episodes which are also as exciting as this one. We also have our social media handles, so please follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. The name is City Star TV. Please do so right now. Okay, so on to today's discussion. We are going to talk about some of the most frequent questions that we asked ourselves as parents, especially as newborn parents, and what we wonder about, all the things that we wonder about. So we did sort of a research, and then we found out some questions that newborn parents ask themselves. And I think the first one I have here is, how long should I breastfeed for? This is the number one question that newborn mothers especially ask themselves. Sometimes they have all these issues with breastfeeding because they wonder how long they should keep doing it for. You know, when can they stop breastfeeding their child? Actually, the minimum requirements by our midwives, by our health specialists, when you go to the hospital, the minimum requirement is 6 months. As a mother, mother of a newborn, you are to breastfeed your baby for 6 months, preferably exclusively. But in case there are certain exigent circumstances that happens that we are not able to breastfeed our kids exclusively, but in these instances, even if you can't do the exclusive breastfeeding, then please make sure that you breastfeed your child for 6 months. So maybe by the second or third month, you want to introduce the child to formula or other kind of feeding, that is fine, so long as you continue to breastfeed your child. You can do the breastfeeding till up to 2 years. For the maximum, I think, so long as after the kid clocks 2, you can continue for a while. But the minimum should be 6 months. That is the minimum requirement for breastfeeding. So if you're a newborn mother out there, just know. And other people ask themselves, another question is related to breastfeeding. If you don't breastfeed your baby, are you a bad parent? Or are you a bad mother? Absolutely not. It could happen that you can't breastfeed your child due to health reasons. Some parents, sometimes during pregnancy, they can develop painful lumps in their breast, or they don't even produce milk. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. These things happen, and I think the medical practitioners will be the best people to tell us why and how it happens. But it do happen, and in these instances, we have no other choice but to introduce our kids, our babies, to formula to help them, and that is okay. You're still taking care of your baby, even though you are not breastfeeding your baby by yourself. You're still being a good mother to your baby. So the fact that you're not able to breastfeed your child on your own does not make you a bad mother. I also have another question here. Goes, how often should I sterilize bottles and pacifiers? So if I'm reading this correctly, it means that you, the mother, you have introduced other feeding or other, yes, you introduce something to your baby, whether it's water or formula. You are giving your baby something and you're using the bottle for it, or you are putting the breast milk in a feeding bottle and giving it to your child. So by your child, you're sipping on something other than your nipples. Okay, so if that is the case, then when it comes to sterilization, you need to make sure that from the very first time, before you introduce this pacifier or the bottle to your child, you have sterilized it to the best of you make sure that it is sterile, 100% sterile. before you give it to your baby. Now, after you've introduced to your baby, you don't necessarily need to sterilize it after every time they use it. You just make sure that after every time they use it, you clean it. You make sure they are very, very clean and well kept away from all these insects and bugs and all dirt, and in a clean and tight space. You keep it clean and away from messy children as well. They'll go and mess all your clean equipment up. You don't necessarily need to sterilize after every use, but you make sure that once a while, maybe a week, once a week, so long as the kid keeps using it, you make sure that it's always sterilized. And you wash. The cleansing should be very thorough. You can't just cleanse with anything. Make sure that whatever you're cleansing with is safe for your child to consume. So I have a third question here, and it goes, what is the proper way to dress a newborn? Wow, what is the proper way to dress a newborn? Now remember, the newborns are, they're very soft, the skin, everything, every part of them is very delicate, and the little thing can cause bruising. Even if you don't hold the baby right, you can bruise the child. So obviously, in the choice of material, you should go with something soft, something completely safe based on your child's needs. You should also know these things, what your child needs. Onesies should be something you should have, because your baby needs to be soft, but it also needs to not be too light, as in to make your baby cold, and not too thick as to make your baby hot. So something that will keep the baby warm, something that will keep the baby's skin soft. Not Don't put your newborn in leather. I don't think anybody dresses their newborn in leather. So that is definitely do not do. Maybe cotton, fair is fine because it's soft and cushiony. So something, yes, in those lines, please don't put your baby in leather and how to have other hard materials that are going to be so tight on them and make them feel hot. By the time you take the thing off, there's so much sweat, and the skin is gone damp because of the sweat exposure. Don't put your kids that. So we have this and many more questions. Stay tuned, we're still discussing it. Okay, so we are still discussing most of the questions that newborn mothers we have on our mind, and we are hoping to give some answers that will put our minds at ease. Now, one of the questions that I have here is, should I wake my sleeping baby up to breastfeed? Absolutely, yes. Now, newborn babies are naturally lazy. I'm telling you, they will sleep the whole day if they can, if they want to, because they are allowed to. They don't have, responsibilities and duties like we the adults do. They are allowed to sleep. Now, some babies can sleep. Oh my, they can sleep. And you need to know that whilst they are sleeping, doesn't mean that they don't go hungry. They're just way too lazy to wake up and cry, even for breast milk. So you as a parent, you need to be on yourself, and you need to be on guard, And then every other hour, so every 2 hours basically, you wake your kid up, you raise your kid, and then you breastfeed your kid. Even when you are breastfeeding, the kid is not opening up, try, because you need to breastfeed your kid within short intervals. They go hungry. They are human. They are processing the food you give them. They are excreting. You see all that poop that they produce and all that pee. That is the breast milk coming right out of them. So you need to make sure you are replacing everything that they lose. So please, absolutely yes. You breastfeed your child. In 2 hours, your child hasn't cried that it's hungry and it's been sleeping for hours, and you're just watching your child sleep. No, no, mom, you're doing it wrong. Wake that child up, get his lazy or her lazy ass off the bed or the cot, and then put your baby on you and breastfeed your baby the right way. If you don't know how to hold the baby whilst breastfeeding, you can go through our episodes and you realize that we have discussed this on other previous episodes, teaching you how to hold your baby right and breastfeed. So go watch that. So I have another question here. It goes like, how do I clean my baby's umbilical cord? Okay, so if you are watching this, I think we've discussed this here before, but I'm going to go do a recap. Well, basically, you need to hold it at the edge. I think we talked about at the tip, and then you use cotton bud. Okay, and then alcohol. When you go to the hospital, they'll give you those kind of spirits, methylated spirits, and then you use it to clean it from the tip and below it where it meets the navel. So you just cleanse it off around that part, and it takes about a week to 2 weeks before it falls off. So you need to be doing this at least 3 times a day. You need to be watching it. You need to make sure that water is not getting into the navel so it doesn't get infected. So the place needs to be dry, hence the methylated spirits, because it will dry it all out. And then you keep doing this until you would notice that eventually the cord connected to the navel, it will be thinning out little by little until it completely falls off by itself. Under no circumstances should you think that it's not falling off fast enough, so you are going to pull it. No way. You do not get to do that, or you just hurt your baby. You need to do the cleansing, and on its own, eventually it will fall off. So just take your time, do the cleansing, and then trust the process. And I'm going to go to my final question. I'm going to talk about 5 questions with you on this episode, and then we discuss more on the next episode. So, my fifth question, my last question for the day is, when can I take my newborn baby out in public? Hmm. Well, I'll stick this answer to Africa. In Africa, we have so many beliefs, be it religious, be it faith, spiritual, traditional, name it. We have so many beliefs. I think some people believe that when you give birth until after 7 days, that technically you shouldn't even let the child step out of your room. And you wonder, how am I even going to go for postnatal checkups and all that? But most Africans, we grew up with that ideology that when I have my baby, if it's not up to 7 days, I don't take my baby out of my room. So when it comes to Africa, I think based on our traditional belief, these answers will vary. But on a normal scientific level, I don't think you can take your child out depending on where you are, the environment, the weather conditions, the humidity, everything. You need to consider a whole lot of factors before you take your baby out. You need to make sure that your baby is properly dressed, so in case of anything, you don't expose your baby's skin to heat or to the sun, because they are very young and very tender, and anything can happen. Their immune system is also very low, so you need to make sure that the environment you live in, if you know that it is infested with a lot of diseases, that you take your child out and you risk letting your child contract a disease, then I don't think it's really important for you to take your child out. So try and keep your child in as much as possible. Limit their exposure to the outside environment until their immune system gets better. So keep a careful look on your child. In fact, when it comes to people that you pass your child, your children on to, oh, hold my baby for me, hold my baby for me for that reason or for this reason, please let us try to minimize that as well. It's very important that when our child is that young, we are very cautious. We try to be as cautious as we can be. So I think we've answered the 5 questions for today's episode. Like I said, we'll talk more on upcoming episodes. I hope your question was here and you have a good response to it. If you don't have if your question wasn't answered on this episode, you see that comment section, just leave your question there. On my next episode, I'll try very much to answer that question for you. Thank you for sticking through with me. My name is Namaya, and as always, I am your host for the show. If you haven't followed us yet on social media handles on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, please do so. The name is City Star TV, and don't forget to subscribe.